Bonsoir, bienvenue dans Guitare Obsession, où aujourd'hui je voulais vous présenter le nouveau délai de chez Beetronics, la Pollinator Hazy Delay. Vous avez peut-être une impression de déjà-vu et c'est bien normal, puisqu'on avait déjà parlé d'un délai de Beetronics il y a quelques mois seulement, à l'occasion de la sortie de leur BBD. La BBD qui est donc un délai entièrement analogique avec quelques commandes numériques pour un processing chelou, et bien là c'est tout l'inverse, c'est-à-dire que c'est leur première pédale entièrement numérique, avec un traitement du signal entièrement numérique, pour arriver à des résultats qui ne sont pas possibles dans le monde analogique. En ça, donc, c'est une grande première pour la marque californienne qu'on adore. Alors déjà, comme d'hab, visuellement, ils ont mis le paquet et c'est toujours aussi beau. Regardez-moi ce choix de potards assortis, ce relief et ces couleurs, et puis ce gunmetal grey là qui est absolument sublime. Mais au-delà de ça, il y a le son. Le cœur de la Pollinator, donc, c'est une chaîne de son avec d'abord une modulation et ensuite un delay. Contrairement donc à la plupart de ce qu'on appelle les delays modulés, qui sont d'abord un delay, ensuite une modulation qui essentiellement joue sur la vitesse du delay, comme par exemple le grand classique, le Memory Man de Electro Harmonix, qui est vraiment la référence en termes de delay modulé, où finalement la modulation est assez prévisible ou caricaturale. Là, donc, avec le Pollinator, le signal est d'abord modulé et ensuite répété, ce qui donne donc des répétitions plus vivantes, plus évolutives, ou même carrément surprenantes selon le réglage. Les réglages, justement, sont très interactifs, donc il ne faut pas hésiter à les triturer pendant que vous jouez, de façon à les écouter bien en profondeur. C'est d'ailleurs ce que je vais faire pendant la démo. Pour une fois, elle ne sera pas à mes pieds, mais à côté de moi. On a donc le mix, qui est le dosage du son direct par rapport au son traité. Et on peut évidemment le mettre à fond pour avoir le son traité uniquement et aller carrément dans l'univers merveilleux des sons bizarres. Le temps de délai, on a le feedback et on a le taux de modulation ou la vitesse de la modulation selon le réglage. Et puis donc on a surtout ce réglage mode qui est central, qui permet de choisir parmi 8 modes différents, avec donc 4 modes où la modulation est un filtre d'enveloppe et 4 autres modes où la modulation est un trémolo. Et après ça, donc, on a différentes manières d'approcher le délai. On a des délais à l'endroit, des délais à l'envers, des délais à l'octave supérieure et des délais à l'octave normale. Autrement dit, donc, on arrive à des bizarreries fabuleuses comme un filtre qui est ensuite traité par un delay à l'envers au double de la vitesse, le tout pouvant évidemment être joué full wet pour un résultat encore plus bizarre. Au vu des possibilités de la Pollinator, il est assez logique que, contrairement à la BBD, elle ne soit pas dotée d'un foot switch de tap tempo, ce qui pour moi est quasiment rafraîchissant sur une pédale de delay, puisque les effets qu'elle produit n'ont pas vocation à être purement rythmiques, comme les délais à tap tempo. Là, on est dans un essaim, dans un nuage de délais évolutifs. Et en plus de ça, donc, on a à la fois le time pour le pur délai, mais on a aussi le mode pour le temps du trémolo, par exemple. Donc, ça peut permettre d'avoir une polyrythmie entre les deux et d'avoir ainsi plusieurs tempos qui se baladent. Donc, pas besoin de tap tempo, c'est pas du tout la philosophie de la Pollinator. À l'occasion du NAMM 2026, donc il y a quelques mois déjà, j'ai eu l'occasion de croiser Filipe, donc le patron de Beetronics, au QG de Beetronics, au nord de Los Angeles, et j'ai eu la chance donc de tester le dernier prototype de la Pollinator et d'en parler avec lui au studio donc de leur QG. Et voici donc notre entretien. On écoute ensuite cette petite merveille.
Yes, this is something I'm pretty excited about. It's our first digital pedal, even though we have had digital controls, never a digital processed sound. This is the first. It's a delay right after the BBD, which is also a delay, which some might question, oh, why another delay? It's quite different than the actual BBD. It actually got nothing to do with the BBD sound-wise. This is a pedal more for textures. You can almost think as a ambience pedal. Ambience, if that makes any sense. But it's in its core, it's a delay, a modulated delay. It's a delay that gets modulated by a filter or a tremolo on its basic view. However, the key signature of its sound comes from the modulation coming before the delay. So the dry signal just goes straight to the mix, right? And then the signal that gets processed first gets processed through the filter or through the tremolo. And then it reaches the delay, and then it becomes the repeats. That creates a very unique interaction and sound to it.
Because what we call a modulated delay, like the Memory Man, it's usually the other way around.
It's modulating at the end after the repeats, and that even gives you this is a little bit more of a nerdy thing for whoever grabs it, but it's a weird thing that whenever you mess with the modulation knob, it takes a while for you to actually hear that change on the modulation, because the repeats that you are hearing, it's actually
they're still on the previous
repeating
setting.
the previous setting,
Right.
So and it has that whole thing, but it actually, the way it interacts with your playing, because believe me, I messed a lot with it before and after, and it's pretty unique and very cool and very different. So basically, you have 4 modes that you have filters, and then you have 4 modes that you have tremolos.
Right.
The modes are somewhat mirrored within them, so the same modes that we have for filters, we have for tremolos. They obviously sound completely different for a variety of reasons, but basically we have forward delay with filter, we have forward octave up delay with the filter as well, then we have reverse delay, regular, and then we have reverse octave up, and the same for the tremolos. We have 2 of the modes, which is number 2 and 7, that we call the Queen Bee special modes, because they are not quite a one thing. They're reactive, and depending where the knob is, it would jump octaves and do all kinds of crazy stuff. And then also, aside from the 8 modes, which is already a lot of sounds. You can literally stay there playing and messing with it and getting so many different sounds. Within each mode, the interaction between the modulation and the time control, and the feedback as well, but mostly, the time, from short delays to long delays, and that combination with fast modulations or slow modulations, it gives so many different sounds,
right.
A lot of things that you would not even think is the same effect. And then you hear on different setting, you're like, oh, that's the same mode? Yes, it gets you a lot of different stuff. So quite different from anything on our line, I would say. We don't really have anything for that. It's a pedal that I would feel myself as a textures pedal, something if you want to create some vibes, if you want to stay tripping on just guitar and let some really long feedbacks and stay tripping on it, or sound design pedal, really good sound design pedal. If you're scoring a movie, you can probably find a lot of different sounds on this thing. So yeah, nothing else we have.
What would you say is your typical design process for a pedal like that? Do you have the concept first, or do you stumble upon it while messing with another pedal?
I want to say this, we kind of had the concept in some way. This is our first digitally processed pedal, right? And we had some limitations of the hardware to work with, which are always good in some way, because also sets us some boundaries in some way. So we kind of knew, we're going to do the whole 8 modes, and we set some limits as far as controls and all of that. But at first the idea was just there was going to be a modulated delay, but we didn't know how far the extent was going to go with the filter or type of filter and all of that. But this one, I would say, more than any of our other ones, which I think is pretty obvious, that the other ones, a lot of the times they just keep going and we never stop going and we just keep going and going. This one, I think we had a pretty set idea of what we wanted to achieve. We didn't really have a full clue of how that was going to sound once everything got applied. And after it did, we actually, for example, this whole thing of like the before and after, we have this whole pedal on a version with it after, with the modulation after.
Interesting.
Like I ran every possibility of the codes before and after, and I had versions of this where in number 1 I had with it before, number 2 I had it with after, number 3 I had it before, and then so I could actually listen and say, oh, at some point we were gonna mix and match them, and then there's always some room for like tripping out on stuff, but this one I would say we had a pretty decent idea, which is not our usual. No, our usual we say, oh, let's do something simple, and then we end up with the CB. that's how it usually goes.
So what was the idea of doing it digitally? Is that an effect that you couldn't obtain in an analog way?
No, you could. I would say was more of part of our learning process and exploration process. Was something like we wanted to mess with, with this type of chip and kind of like start learning from it. So it was kind of part of just the learning and curiosity of like, okay, what can we do? And we've been venturing with other digital things and other digital platforms to do effects as well. A lot of them actually, a lot of different things in that sense. Filipe Alberti, who is the guy who did the codes on this, was something that me and him always discuss. Oh, let's try messing with that, but we never really got to it. And then lately we just got to it. So we're like, all right, let's do it. Let's find what would be our own thing. And I feel like we were able to achieve, this uses an FV1, which is a popular type of platform for you to do effects. And I have no FV1 pedals that does what this thing does, which is something that I'm really excited about it as well. I think we did this in a very Beetronics way, so which is for me what it matters the most. I'm not interested in bringing something that already exists. You know, it's not part of what we do. So
yeah, you're not known for that.
So we try.
Was there a particular challenge? I'm thinking this is probably the first time I hear a digital filter that sounds that natural and organic, so to speak.
I would say the hardest challenge, and I'm not the technical guy doing a lot of this, but I'm the guy who's bothering the technical guy a lot about this. But the hardest challenge on this type of thing has to do with headroom. And then especially for the filter, as soon as you start adding resonance, shit starts blowing up.
Yeah, because of the extreme peaks.
Exactly, and then especially at slow speeds. And that will happen to some extent still, but this was something that we really wanted to dial in, where it is in a sweet spot of, whenever you're, have a very resonant filter happening, and it depending on what you're playing, and also, the type of guitar. So messing a lot with that up until, we're just days away from its official announcement date, and I was still messing with some levels and things like that, and going back and forth on codes.
Right.
I would say probably the biggest challenge with this is digital filters, which usually, it doesn't. Not always they sound great. Let's put it that way. So
yeah. I'm really surprised, because when I heard it, I couldn't have told.
That's
it
cool.
was digital from the filters, especially.
We've learned some of that from the Zombie as well, which, whenever we were doing the Zombie, I had some actual digital filter pedals, and I would hear them and not like them compared to what we were doing with the zombie. And then this whole things of levels and all that was something that we learned. The zombie is more extreme, and if you play it, you're going to see that the filter really goes all in, but it's also a fuzz and low octave pedal, so we wanted for the resonance to come in crazy. This one, it can get more mellow. You can go more crazy, but it's usually more for texture, so it's kind of like more dialed in for that.
You seemingly cannot be stopped when you never got into delay before that.
The thing is, like, we just never released the delay before, but But
you've done plenty of them.
Yeah, we've been like messing with a lot of stuff. It's kind of like how we always done our thing. Probably is slightly different than some other companies do, where sometimes things are very planned on markets and all of that. And we go a lot on our curiosity and researching and things that we're doing. For instance, this been probably more done. This was probably more done by the time we were releasing the BBD. This was quite done. We could have released this or, to some level, and then there is other delay projects that we have that are somewhat done, and it just happened that they are all getting done at the same time. Let's put it that way. So we're not gonna hold them hostage just because whatever, So we're kind of, there's more.
Si vous faites de la musique à l'image, que vous jouez dans des styles planants, expérimentaux, voire bruitistes, la nouvelle Beetronics Pollinator pourrait bien être le délai qui inspirera vos 5 prochains albums. On n'en attendait pas moins de la part de Beetronics qui ne fait jamais rien comme les autres et je n'hésiterai pas longtemps à lui décerner le prix très envié de délai expérimental par excellence. Bien sûr, vous pourrez trouver des sons de délai classiques, mais il faut vraiment les trouver. Là, rien n'est normal et tout est surprenant, tout est nouveau. Comme dirait une certaine chanteuse, tout est neuf et tout est sauvage. Libre continent sans grillage. Je crois que c'est sans grillage. Merci d'avoir regardé cette vidéo, j'espère qu'elle vous a plu. N'hésitez pas donc, comme d'habitude, à vous inscrire à ma chaîne pour me sortir enfin de ce plateau terrible. Merci aussi de la liker et d'envisager de vous inscrire à mon Patreon. N'hésitez pas à utiliser le lien partenaire dans la description si l'envie vous prend d'acheter cette merveille de chez Beetronics ou une autre pédale de chez Beetronics. D'ailleurs, une fois que vous passez par mon lien, ensuite, ce sera dans vos cookies. Je crois que c'est comme ça qu'on dit. Et on se retrouve dans les commentaires pour vous battre à propos du meilleur délai expérimental de tous les temps. Est-ce que vous êtes resté au bon vieux Memory Man et que vous n'en changerez jamais? Ou est-ce que, au contraire, vous avez trouvé quelque chose d'encore plus bizarre que la Pollinator? Auquel cas, je suis tout à fait curieux d'avoir vos avis sur la question. Et je vous souhaite une excellente semaine.